on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 2 o'clock, the police watchdog is investigating claims Scotland Yard covered up child sex offences because of the involvement of MPs and officers. The IPCC says the allegations are of historic high-level corruption. LBC senior reporter Tom Swarbrick has more.
From 1970 to 2005, police are alleged to have covered up reports of child sex abuse by senior officials and members of Parliament. One of the 14 referrals says documents found at the home of a paedophile naming MPs allegedly involved in a paedophile ring weren't followed up on by police. The IPCC say the allegations are of the most serious nature. Tom Swarbrick, LBC at New Scotland Yard.
Labour leader Ed Miliband has ruled out any coalition with the Scottish National Party. He says there would be no SNP ministers in any government he leads.
The party that haven't won a majority for over 20 years are running a misleading campaign based on the idea of a Labour-SNP coalition. As I said on Thursday night, this idea is nonsense. It will not happen.
It's after Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said she wouldn't rule out an informal alliance with Labour after the election. Labour's demanding an immediate investigation into whether or not Conservative Party Chairman Grant Shapps breached the Minister's Code of Conduct. Speaking to LBC last month, Mr Shapps denied having a second job as a writer while working as an MP. Shadow Cabinet Office Minister John Ashworth has told Sheila he's surprised Mr Shapps had time for other work.
I've got to be honest, I've got no idea how these MPs who do have lots of directorships find the time to do them. I work flat out. When I'm at home, I'm always answering emails, doing casework in the office or dealing with parliamentary duties. So I just don't know where they would fit in time to be being a director and spending a couple of days a week doing other stuff.
The Prime Minister says he has full confidence in Mr Shapps. Police have arrested an 18-year-old man from Birmingham suspected of preparing to travel to Syria to join IS militants. It's after 3 teenagers from London were stopped by officials in Turkey at the weekend. A man's been found dead after a fire in a shed in West London. Firefighters were called to an allotment in Isleworth last night. Facebook has created a new rulebook to tell users the sort of content they can and can't post on the site. They say they hope the update will provide clarity about the standards the website has. In the past, images of things such as breastfeeding have been tightly clamped down on. LBC weather largely cloudy with scattered showers, but a few bright spells for London and the southeast, highs of 8 degrees. Cloudy across England, Wales and Scotland with patchy rain, but some brighter spells. Mostly dry for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, but feeling cold. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rosanne Wynne.
What about this one, love?
Is it semi-detached?
Yeah.
Is it 3 bedrooms?
Uh-huh.
Does it have an ensuite?
Yeah.
Gas central heating?
Uh-huh.
Garden?
Yep.
South-facing?
Yeah.
Conservatory?
Yep.
Shops nearby?
Yeah.
Off-road parking?
Yeah.
Double glazing?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have a walk-in wardrobe?
It's got a shed.
It's difficult enough choosing the right house. At NatWest, we help make choosing your mortgage easier. We can even tell you how much you could borrow in just 10 minutes. Talk to us today about our lowest ever mortgage rates or search NatWest Mortgages.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Sheila Fogarty on LBC.
Hello, good afternoon to you if you're just joining us. I'm joined by Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting. We'll hear from him in just a moment. Do get your calls in if you want to put a question to him or share your thoughts with him. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. We'll talk with him about Ed Miliband's announcement just a few moments ago, half an hour or so ago, on no plans for a coalition with the SNP. We'll talk about what Trevor Phillips has been saying as well, and your calls in the last hour on that. And at 3, we're going to talk about this new campaign from the Met to roll out soon, raising awareness for families and for young people and for teachers to try to prevent radicalisation. We'll talk about that as well. Hello, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, good to be here.
Great to have you here. We just very quickly had to clean the desk before you sat down because it was full of tea stains.
Those are the standards that I expect and demand whenever I'm on LBC.
Tea stains for which I think I might have been responsible, but there you go, you're very welcome. 0345 606 0973 if you want to talk to Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting. If I may start with what your leader, Ed Miliband, has been saying on coalitions. No coalition with the SNP, is ruling that out. Is it an during an election campaign for that question to constantly be asked about coalitions? Because, of course, you're campaigning for an outright win, but it is a reality you can't ignore, isn't it?
If I'm honest, it's a huge distraction. I mean, there are literally thousands and thousands of people every day knocking on doors, speaking to voters, trying to persuade them why on May the 7th they should vote Labour, trying to argue our cause on merit, pointing to our policies, pointing to some of the things we want to do. And often when politicians are interviewed by broadcast journalists or those in print, they ask the question, who would you get into bed with? And the obvious answer to the question, which is the truthful answer, is there are no deals, we're in no discussions, we have no plans into getting into bed with anybody. We want to have a manifesto which sets out our bold and radical policy offer, and hopefully people will vote for a Labour government. So Ed Miliband as Prime Minister and the Labour Party can do all the things we need to do to, fix the problems created over the last 5 years. But the problems that have been created over the last 10, 20 years, if we're honest, not all the problems were caused by this government. Some have been long-standing, and we've got to have the honesty to say that.
But I'm sorry to start every question on this with if, but if the SNP really could be kingmakers for a Labour government, that's going to be very tempting.
Well, look, I mean, I can't better the words of Ed Miliband, who said this morning, to allow me the opportunity to repeat it today in LBC, which is that there are no deals, we're having no discussions, and we have no plans to form a coalition government with the SNP. We want to win an outright majority. But if you ask the question, which is, would I rather have David Cameron as Prime Minister, 5 more years of the sort of stuff they've been doing, or Ed Miliband, I choose Ed Miliband all day long.
Well, we know that, but would you choose Ed Miliband if it meant a deal of some sort, if not a full coalition with the SNP?
Well, I think we're in danger of getting ahead of ourselves here. We've got 52 days to go. I am spending every day, as indeed many hardworking members, supporters, activists are, speaking to your listeners, speaking to my neighbours and others around London and around the country, trying to persuade them why our plan is a better plan for our country's future.
Am I right in saying you've been put in charge of trying to work out why the Greens are taking so many Labour votes, or appear to be taking so many Labour votes, and that's a kind of flow that you want to stop? You want to change the direction of that, because the Greens, I saw one tweet the other day, actually, I won't say who sent it, but I saw one tweet saying the Greens are what Labour should be, that's why they're losing votes.
Well, I've been asked to be in charge of the campaign in London, but also to make sure that every single person who should be voting Labour does. And there are some people flirting with voting with the Green Party, and my job is to persuade them in a non-patronising way why I think they should vote Labour rather than the Greens. So if you care about addressing inequality, if you care about saving and transforming the National Health Service, if you care about ensuring that we have a foreign policy that's a good one, if you care about making sure the right lessons are learned from the previous government, if you care about having more homes built for not just homes or rent, if you believe that Whitehall should give more power away to London but to other cities and regions, vote Labour. I
want to talk to you about English devolution a little later, but we'll go to calls first of all. Phil in Sidcup. Hi, Phil.
Hi, thank you very much. Hi, Sadiq. Just wondering if you were able to give me your 5 election pledges for the Mayor of London without looking at any notes.
I think you mean for the general election rather than the Mayor of London. The Mayor of London is...
No, I'm actually talking for the Mayor of London.
Yeah. It's very kind of you to suggest that I could have the best job in politics, the Mayor of London, and we'll maybe come into that later on. But look, so the general election in 51 days' time, there are 5 pledges that we have. One is to make sure we've got an economy where we can reduce the deficit as soon as we possibly can in a fair way. We want to make sure we have policy to help the next generation. That's why we need to make sure that we reduce tuition fees, have good quality apprenticeships for all, but also reduce for 5, 6 and 7-year-olds. We need a fair immigration policy, which means what we're going to do is make sure people, when they come here, can't receive benefits until they've been here for 2 years, but also to ensure we end the exploitation of employers undercutting local people by paying below the minimum wage. We also want to address the cost of living crisis. We're going to take on the big six energy companies who've been allowed to, increase prices when the cost of fuel goes up, but don't reduce it when it goes down. Make sure we address the cost of living crisis. And the last thing we're going to do, of course, is to save and transform the National Health Service. We were the party that created the NHS in 1948. Before 1997, it was falling apart. We saved it again in 1997. We're going to save and transform it if we win the next general election by integrating physical care, mental care and social care, but also by recruiting 20,000 more nurses, 8,000 more doctors.
Phil, I can confirm he didn't look at his notes once when he said any of that. I know you.
Thank you very much.
I know you've got London Mayor in mind, but you don't want to talk about the mayoral candidacy.
I mean,
do you?
it's very kind of Phil to raise the issue of the Mayor of London. Let me be frank, when I'm doing my job as the Shadow Minister for London, I'm often asked, not just by journalists but by others, whether I'd want to be the Mayor of London. Why aren't I putting my hat in the ring to be the Mayor of London? And the honest answer is it's a great job. But if you look at the best sports people, the best politicians, the best broadcasters, they say the most important job is the next one, the next fight, the next election,
the next interview.
And so, listen, I think London is best served by a Labour government, and I wouldn't want to be distracted by talk about an election that's still, 14 months away.
Well, just finally on that, on the London job, will you, after the general election, regardless of the outcome, will you just let people know then, one way or another?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is that, we win the general election, get a Labour Prime Minister and a Labour government so we can implement the manifesto that we'll be unveiling in the next few weeks. Then we can have a discussion about who the best person is to be Labour's candidate for the Mayor of London and what sort of values, vision and policies he or she would have. OK, lbc.co.uk if you want to watch Sadiq Khan talking to me between now and 3, I think. You can do on the website lbc.co.uk. Sabur has called from Gillingham. Hi, Sabur.
Hi, Sadiq. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Do you think a Muslim candidate can ever become the Mayor of London? Can our mosque play a role? Will you be getting a support from the mosque in elections or not? Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I promise I didn't line that up. That's just, there he is.
That's Sheila's nephew ringing up to ask that question in the really fourth different way that can possibly ask. Look, can I just say, and it's a really important point, I'm the first Khan in 3 generations who will not be emigrating. My grandparents fled India after partition to Pakistan, and my parents left Pakistan to come to this great city in the 1960s. I have no plans to leave London. I love this city. It's, the city that's allowed me to fulfil my potential in my views. I speak to my cousins in Muslim majority countries and they are envious that I've managed to, do the things that I've managed to do. I think anything is possible in this city. I mean, to paraphrase, Martin Luther King, it's the content of my character, I hope, rather than the colour of my skin or how I pray. That should determine whether I could be the mayor of the greatest city in the world.
Sabur?
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
No, just my question is that is our mosque, they are supporting us or not in that issue?
I think
in the election.
I think what's really important and what we've tried to do in this general election, more so than any previous election, is not simply go door to door, street to street, community hall to community hall, but mosque to mosque, church to church, synagogue to synagogue. We want to get as many people involved in the next general election as possible. Unfortunately, the bad news is estimates are between 5 million and 7 million British people who are eligible to vote in the general election registered. So what's really important in the first place, Sabor, is that the mosques get people registered to vote in the general election if they're eligible to vote. Obviously, the next step then, is for people like me to inspire, persuade, encourage them to vote Labour. And I think the mosques have a huge role to play in turning British Muslims into British Muslims who are active citizens.
Thanks for your call, Sabur. Can I just ask you on the subject of Muslims in Britain? These 3 teenagers, the latest group, 2 I think are, if not already back, on their way back to the UK. And we've had the arrest in Birmingham today as well of an 18-year-old who's been released on bail, pending further inquiries, stopped from even leaving the country. So I suppose that's a start. The Bethnal Green girls not so intervene for an intervention to happen. We're going to talk after 3 with the Met about a new project they plan involving parents more deeply. Is that the key, do you think?
There is, I remember a saying, actually, Chuka Ramuna told me this saying, it's an African saying, which is, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it takes, all of us have a responsibility in relation to young Londoners and young Britons, whether you're a parent, a school teacher, the police, the local mosque, neighbour, friends. I'm a parent of 2 daughters aged 15 and 13. I mean, the ability young people have to go on the computer and look at what people are saying 3,000 miles away in their bedroom, not in a mosque, not during a fiery sermon, not in school, should worry us all. And I think what we need to recognise is it's possible to be groomed, to be indoctrinated in one's bedroom. And so if you're a mum or dad like I am, if you're a dad like I am, or a mum or an auntie or an uncle or a big brother or a big sister, ask the question, what is my younger brother, my younger sister, my son, daughter up to? Of the bedroom, find out what's happening in the schools. And there's a really important word that I think is really important. It's resilience. And it's, are we making our children resilient enough so when some charismatic preacher of hate tries to turn them, or a groomer tries to turn them, they can withstand
see it for
that.
what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so important.
Do you think, though, you mentioned there the fiery sermons, do you think, though, I was having a conversation about this over the weekend with someone, that actually, much as we might not like to listen to some of the fiery sermons, depending on the content, isn't it better that they're there in the open for us to see, to hear, to challenge, than in the dark, the shadows of the internet? I mean, it was probably inevitable that they would be taking place in both. But is there a danger in silencing them?
I think debate generally is a good thing. I think you should be able to defeat most things via debate, via rational debate. That's why, what Trevor Phillips has said in a different context about race, there shouldn't be sacred cows we can't discuss. You can defeat these guys, and how illogical they are and how perverse their views are. And there are many Muslims, not just like myself and people I know in London, Muslims around the world who will condemn unequivocally some of the evidence these guys based their theology on, and we can defeat them. And once we defeat them, hopefully it means less people following their hateful sermons.
OK, thank you for now. Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting. He's with us for the next 45 minutes now, so do keep your calls coming. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. It's 16 minutes past 2.
I'm Joanne Webb in the LBC Travel Centre, just hearing about some problems in Kent on the A2 eastbound, very slow between Dartford Heath and the M25 junction, and that's because of an accident where 2 lanes are closed. In London on the A20 in Mottingham, very slow heading towards the Cliftons roundabout because only 1 lane is open, and that was after an accident, so there are queues on the approach. Also in London there are delays in Bermondsey because Southwark Park Road is closed in both directions for bridge maintenance works. Now these problems continue in Somerset and Bridgewater. The A39 is closed in both directions, and that's after an accident. And then in Dorset there are problems in Bournemouth. The A338 Wessex Way has just been closed in both directions after an accident, and as you can imagine there are long queues in the area. On the trains, better news for Stansted Express and Greater Anglia services. Those delays of about 15 minutes have just cleared. Keeping you moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
This is LBC.
My transit van. It's where I've got everything I need: floral foam, stub and rose wires, buckets, trays, secateurs, stem tape, and half a packet of cheese and onion crisps. Same with new Ford Transit Centres. I know everything I need is there too. They're dedicated, so these guys know Ford vans inside out. Expert advice on choosing the right vehicle, help with finance, support to keep me on the road. I can count on it all. They're nationwide and open late, so I'm never far from the services I need when I need them. New Ford Transit Centres in a few words. Specialist sales, service and repairs. It's all in.
Darling, what's wrong?
It's her. I've heard her answering your phone. She's there every time I call.
Who? My e-receptionist? She just answers my business calls.
Yes, her. She's so cheap.
Yes, just 30p per day.
E-Receptionist answers all your calls and diverts them so your customers speak to the right people every time, avoiding any dramas. For your free trial, go to ereceptionist.co.uk.
Landlords. Direct Line guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
My Ivor. Oh, where do I start? He's always snoring away. He constantly hogs the remote control in the evening and is forever dragging mud into the house with the grandkids. But there's only one thing I wish I could change about him, though. His cholesterol.
Help the remote hogger in your life lower their cholesterol in 21 days. Search Flora Proactive online and order your free cholesterol-lowering starter kit now. Flora Proactive contains plant sterol shown to lower blood cholesterol. High cholesterol is a risk factor of coronary heart disease. Eating 1.5 to 2.4 grams of plant sterols a day can lower cholesterol by 7 to 10% in 2 to 3 weeks when consumed as part of a healthy diet and lifestyle.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The truths about race we're not allowed to talk about. Trevor Phillips, former chairman of the Commission for Racial Equality.
You cannot get people to unthink what they think simply by telling them they may not say it.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7 on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, with over 2,000 hotels worldwide.
I'm laughing because I've just been tweeted a photograph from Boris Johnson's own Twitter feed. Great visit to London Institution at Kew Gardens earlier to meet horticulturalists of the future and to plant water lilies. And there's a picture of him. Sadiq Khan is here with me as well.
Well, can I just say, can I take back, when he's not beneath Pond Life, he is Pond Life.
Oh, come on. That's campaigning to be London Mayor if ever I saw it.
Well, at least I didn't say he's a drip.
Well, for people who can't see the picture, he's sort of waist height in water, wearing a very fetching pair of waders as well while he is. So planting water lilies, that's what awaits you if you become Mayor of London.
Apparently it's the quickest way to become the next leader of the Tory party.
What, to get a pair of waders on?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, you're referring back to David Cameron's campaign. Yeah. There's a David on the line. I promise you it's not that one. David in Enfield. Hello.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Sadiq.
Good afternoon, David.
My question is to do with women voting. It's been reported on LBC recently that over 9 million women don't vote. Women are the prime carers in the family, so they must be concerned, most working today, about equal pay, housing, education for their children, childcare, all the things that concern the prime caregiver. Why do you think women are not voting, and what would you do to increase the turnout of women voting in the next election?
Wow, that's a really important and really good question. I'm not sure how long we've got, but I'll try and do my best in the short time we have. So you're right. So in the last general election in 2010, there were 9 million women who were on the electoral register but didn't vote. And we know from figures released recently on International Women's Day that women earn 83% of what men earn. So basically, a woman from November the 2nd up until the end of the year will be working for nothing in most jobs. In the place in Parliament, only 1 out of 5 MPs is a woman. If you count up the number of women that have ever been elected from the first time a woman was elected in the 1920s up until now, there are still fewer women ever elected than blokes in Parliament today. It's a big, big problem. And I genuinely think that Parliament is at its best when we represent the communities we seek to legislate for and govern. So it's a massive, massive problem. And as I said, I've got 2 daughters, and it worries me to think that they will not be able to fulfil their potential because of the fact they're girls rather than boys. We need to do a number of things. I welcome what Harriet Harman and the team have been doing with the tour around the country. People spent 3 days talking about the colour of the bus, not talking about the fact that they're going around the country talking to women about who have been registered to vote and voting. Secondly, I think there is a symbolic importance. There is actually in having more women in positions of power and influence. It makes a difference. It makes a difference when I see when I'm going to a platform and there's no woman there. I always make a point of saying there should be a woman on the platform.
Every time.
I always make a point. It's really important to me when I do a public meeting, and I did one most recently last week for Comres and the London Chamber of Commerce, only an all-male panel, and I made the point. Look, there are many women experts where you could have called up as well, and I think
if on a given, you see, I am a woman, in case you hadn't noticed, and on a given day, it may be perfectly fine for it to be a panel full of men. It may be perfectly fine to be a panel full of women.
Sure. Can you think of one example where there isn't a woman expert who could have been on a panel?
Well, I haven't been setting up programmes to that effect or panels to that effect. I genuinely can't speak about that. But
can I tell you what
I'm
that's
saying,
to me?
But I'm just saying that from a woman's point of view, if there was a discussion about broadcasting, I don't think I would want to be the woman on the panel because they needed a woman on the panel. I'd want them to be saying, now, we need Sheila Fogarty's presence on this panel because of her experience doing X, Y and Z, not because she's a woman.
That was the argument used against all women shortlists, right? Had we not had all women shortlists in the 1990s, we would certainly have 20-odd women MPs in Parliament. Sometimes you've got to kickstart to change the environment you're in. And we now have a situation where, are we honestly saying that some of the brilliant women in the shadow cabinet, some of the brilliant women who will be in the cabinet...
You say they just wouldn't have been there.
Unless we'd have sort of kick-started the system by a women shortlist, it wouldn't have happened. But let me show you why it's important, David, because actually we all have different life experiences. My experience as somebody who's the son of a bus driver, is an ethnic minority, is a Londoner, supports Liverpool, is very different from your experience or Sheila's experience or the experience of my neighbours and friends, some of whom are women, some of whom are men. We want people who are making laws to represent all of society. And my worry with, and I'm not saying this in a patronising way, about people who aren't political, not just women, but people who aren't political, is they get put off the way we do politics in Parliament. It's Punch and Judy, it's alpha male, it's testosterone driven, the hours aren't friendly, it's very macho. Why would you get involved in voting, get registered, let alone stand for political office, if that's what you see every time you switch on the TV?
Do you think there are parallels with black and ethnic minority voters here as well? Because I know that's something you feel that your own party missed a trick on.
I think we let down women, black, Asian, minority ethnic, people who are disabled, working class. Look, if you are a bus driver, if you work on a factory floor, if you're a shopkeeper, you think, wrongly by the way, you haven't got the skills to be a good member of Parliament because you can't handle 45 minutes with Sheila Fogarty, or because you can't do a cracking speech without notes for 45 minutes. Those aren't the only skills you need to be a good MP, to be a good legislator, to be a good politician. Your life experience really make a difference.
You happy with that?
David, what do you think? What more could we do to encourage women to take part in elections, getting on the register and voting as well?
Well, I agree with you about Harriet Harman and a bus, because it's that symptomatic of the problem, and the problem's been totally overlooked. But I think what we need is, we need a lot more women in government, simply because women are more caring. I think women are far better organisers. They're far more dispassionate. They're far more sort of common sense. And for women, and then of course you have 2 million women who are single parents, and who's representing their interests?
Well, things, if you look at, there's been some independent research done on this, so it's not simply me or the Labour Party saying this. The biggest group of people who suffered as a consequence of the government's policies of the last 5 years have been women. And it's really important we recognise, and I don't think, for example, a cabinet would talk about removing anonymity of people accused of rape if there were more women in the cabinet. I don't think, for example, some of the cuts the government have made, they would make if there were more women in the cabinet. So it does matter who's around the table. I agree with you 100%.
Thanks for your call, David. Steve in Basildon. Hello, Steve.
Hello. I'd just like to ask a question to pick you up on a point that was made earlier about 8,000 new doctors and 20,000 new nurses. For 30 years now, we've been headhunting. That's how things have been going in this country. And I'd like to know where we're going to get these people from, because Europe must have been tapped out by now. So it's just figures. It's just bandied around. There's nothing behind it.
Well, can I agree with half of the point you made, Steve, which I think we've got to ask the question, where are the people going to come from? I think the reason why I was at an event last week in Parliament where 200 Filipino nurses and care workers came to Parliament, an event organised by me and Unison. And the reason why, you will know this from your experience at your hospital, many of us will know this from our experience in care homes, we have more and more people who haven't been trained here doing the jobs that really should be done by people trained here. And what we need to do is, encourage more people to be nurses, encourage more people to be doctors, encourage more people to be care workers, give them the skills they need to do the job, but also give them the remuneration, give them the pay, give them the right conditions for them to do the job, so we're not having a race to the bottom where we're hiring people from overseas because they're cheaper. And also, frankly speaking, let's be honest, a lot of our doctors and nurses are emigrating. I meet so many talented nurses, so many doctors emigrating to Australia, to Canada, to New Zealand, why can't we keep the people we spent taxpayers' money training? And that's why we need long-term answers. We need a long-term
But that didn't only kick in 2010, to be fair.
And to be fair to me, I said at the outset when I first started this programme with you that actually some of the blame is of the last 4 or 5 years. Some of it is decades long. We need to have a long-term plan. We need to treat people with respect, encourage women and men to do these courses, whether it's medicine or nurses or care workers, and then treat them well so they stay in that profession.
Can I ask you, given that we're talking about the NHS here, you talked a moment ago about what you regarded as the failures of the Conservative and Lib Dem coalition on the NHS. But can I ask you to respond to something that The Spectator reported a week ago or so, saying that a Health Select Committee, a set of findings by that committee, there was an attempt to block them being published or to block them one way or another by the Labour members of that committee. The committee had found that there were no sweeping privatisations taking place in the NHS, little increase in private sector since 2010, no extension of charges or top-ups during the current Parliament, less red tape, no evidence that the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership poses a threat to the NHS. Key things that you have been campaigning on when it comes to the NHS.
I've not seen the Spectator magazine or that article, but clearly there should be complete transparency that, sunlight is the best disinfectant. We should have openness. And what I want over the next 50 days is, open discussions, debates, arguments with politicians of all colour about what their vision is for the National Health Service, whether it's to privatise it or whether it's to properly invest in it.
But Labour says that the Conservatives intend to privatise it, and let me finish my question first. That there are huge swathes of privatisation taking place. The figures show that there's been a very small increase in privatisation, and that Andy Burnham has said we let the market in too much in Labour. So you're not on as clean a ground as you think here.
Sure. Well, as I said, I can't talk to the Spectator article. We have had over the last 5 years something called the Health and Social Care Act, and that act requires, by the way, it costs £3 billion in having a top-down reorganisation that nobody wants, so £3 billion that could have been spent on clinicians. What is that money being spent on? Well, part of it is being spent on reorganising the NHS, but another part is being spent on trusts having to employ competition lawyers to give them advice whether they are advertising for services they procure lawfully. And I'd rather trusts be hiring clinicians rather than competition lawyers. I've nothing against lawyers, but I think that's a waste of taxpayers' money. And the danger is this: the danger is some of the services that could be done by the public sector, by the NHS, will now have to be done by private companies because this Act requires us to do so. That's why we're going to repeal the Act.
OK, many thanks for now. We've got 15 more minutes with Sadiq Khan, Labour's Shadow Justice Secretary and MP for Tooting as well. Do keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. It's 2:31 even. Get the headlines from Ros Unwin.
Scotland Yard's being investigated over what's been described as historic high-level corruption of the most serious nature. The police watchdog's looking at whether officers covered up historic child sex abuse because MPs and other officers were involved. Ed Miliband says Labour won't go into a coalition government with the Scottish National Party after the election. The Labour leader says there'll be no SNP ministers in any government he leads. Shadow Justice Secretary Sadiq Khan's told LBC Labour aren't looking for any type of coalition.
We're in no discussions. We have no plans into getting into bed with anybody. We want to have a manifesto which sets out our bold and radical policy offer, and hopefully people will vote for a Labour government. So Ed Miliband as Prime Minister.
The Labour Party wants a full investigation into whether Conservative Party Chairman Grant Shapps breached the MP's Code of Conduct. On LBC last month, Mr Shapps denied having a second job as a writer while working as an MP, but has now admitted he did. LBC weather largely cloudy with scattered showers, but a few bright spells for London and the South East, highs of 8 degrees. Cloudy for England, Wales and Scotland with patchy rain, but some bright spells. Mostly dry for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, but feeling cold. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Ros Unwin.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
Mum, I've lost my phone.
OK, think. Where did you last have it?
I don't know. I've lost it. What am I going to do? It's the end of the world.
Don't panic. That new nationwide Flex Plus current account your dad and I just opened comes with worldwide family mobile phone insurance.
Yeah, but what if
And we're automatically covered from the moment we open the account. So we can just... What's that ringing?
Oh, it's my phone. It's in the bottom of my bag. OK, I've got to go. See you later. Bye.
Bye then.
They say money makes the world go round. But at Nationwide, we think it's people.
Which is why we created Flex Plus, a current account that comes with 3 de facto 5-star rated insurance products and other features your family could benefit from for just £10 a month. Nationwide, on your side.
You must be 18 and over to apply. Flex Plus Worldwide Family Mobile Phone Insurance has been arranged for nationwide by Lifestyle Services Group Limited with a single provider, London General Insurance Company Limited. Policy excesses, limitations and exclusions apply.
The smarter way to manage business expenses. Presented by Concur.
I checked out of my hotel and the bill was automatically added to my expense claim. Then I hopped into a taxi, I took a picture of the receipt using Concur, and there it was, on my expense claim. Then I used my corporate card to buy the client's lunch. Another charge added to my expense claim.
Expenses that write themselves. Just one of the many ways Concur helps manage your company's spend, so you can focus on the big picture. Take a free test drive at tryconcur.co.uk.
Darling, what's wrong?
I missed a call. It was that big order. And when I called back, he'd already gone with another supplier.
Why? Why didn't we have e-receptionist answering and directing our calls? Avoid the horror of the missed call from just 30p a day with e-receptionist. Visit e-receptionist.co.uk for your free 30-day trial.
Free trial must be cancelled within 30 days to avoid fees.
118434, the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
When patients come to us for help, many of them have been living with painful, disfigured teeth for years. But our treatment could give you a full set of beautiful fixed teeth restored in just a matter of hours. I'm Dr. Michael Zibitz from TDC Implant Centre, and our new innovative procedure could help you even if your regular dentist has told you nothing can be done. So see smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
Landlords. Direct Line guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Sheila Fogarty on LBC.
0345 606 0973 is the number to call if you want to speak to my guest this hour, Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting. If you're only just tuning in, don't bother asking a question about whether he's going to stand as London Mayor. He's made it very clear he's not going to tell us till after the general election.
To be fair, there's only been 16 people who have asked, so...
No more this hour on that, but we'll come to the calls again in just a second. I just want to ask you, if I may, a quick question. About the Met. The police watchdog is investigating alleged corruption in the Met, including claims of sex offences because of the involvement of police officers and some MPs. Peter Saunders from NAPAC, the National Association for People Abused, has spoken about this in the last few minutes. Let's have a listen.
The more that's coming out, and we have to keep mentioning the word allegations, of course, because nothing's been proven in a court of law yet, but at NAPAC, over the years that we've been operating, nearly 20 years, we've heard from countless numbers of people, some of whom are talking about abuse at the hands of the people who we hope are finally now being investigated. And it really is challenging and worrying, though, when allegations against the police emerge, because if there's anybody in society that you hope will do the job of protecting society and particularly protecting vulnerable youngsters, it should be the police.
What do you think needs to be done about this, particularly with the child's sexual abuse inquiry in mind and as the backdrop to all of it, I suppose?
Well, it's really important that these allegations are properly investigated independently. The way we police in this country is we police by consent. You rely upon victims and witnesses coming forward and reporting a crime and then cooperating with the prosecution, being a witness and taking part in the prosecution. If a victim or a witness lacks confidence in the police, our whole system falls apart, which leads eventually to crimes not being reported, victims not coming forward. And what we need is an independent investigation, not simply to find out what happened, because they're very serious allegations dating back 20, 30, 40 years, but also so people can have confidence that the police and the authorities will investigate an allegation if future allegations are made.
It was interesting to read Theresa May that the abuse allegation inquiry. The tone of the article seemed to me to be preparing us for some really uncomfortable revelations about the country that we live in. Is that something you've discussed with your colleagues in Parliament one way or another?
I think it's a good thing that we're talking about this. I think the concern that
no
many
matter
of us
what
had,
it uncovers.
Yeah, I mean, the concern people will have is that we're sweeping under the carpet ourselves. The establishment, inverted commas, looks after their own. We always look after our own, always have done, always will do. And we need to draw a line underneath this, but not draw a line by hiding things away. We need to find out what happened. People need to have their day in court. People need to tell their stories. People need to know that the lessons are going to be learned. When you speak to a victim of a horrific crime or their family, one of the things that keeps them going is knowing that in the future there won't be other victims like they were.
And if some of the revelations touch on the Labour Party, either then or now, that the Labour Party will be absolutely blunt and upfront about it, will it?
Absolutely. We must cooperate fully with any inquiry. Politicians of past or present need to cooperate fully. We need to know what happened. There can be no excuse or justification for not taking part in the investigations and the inquiry.
OK, Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting, is with me for a few more minutes. Mohammed is called from Beckton. Hi, Mohammed.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to ask Mr. Sadiq Khan, what is the party is going to do about, or intentions are, to do about the housing shortages within the country, especially in London, and the sky-high rent? I mean, practical answer, please.
Okay, well, housing is the number one issue for Londoners and is a big issue for everyone around the country. For those, who don't realise why it's a big issue, in London, the average cost of a property is now £458,000. And the average cost includes studio 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom. The average cost to rent is £1,200 a month. I have come into my surgery each week, mums and dads who are having to move every 6 months because the landlord in a private accommodation increases the rent. They can't afford the increase, so they've got a choice of moving out of the area, which means their children having to travel long distances, or having to borrow money to stay local. And it's causing huge problems, not just to young Londoners, but to older ones as well. So to answer your question, what are we going to do about it? Well, firstly, we're going to build record numbers of homes. Our target is to build 200,000 homes a year. Roughly speaking, 80,000 of those need to go in London. Some to buy, some to rent from the council, some to rent from private registered landlords. We've also got to change the way the rental market works. So give tenants the ability to have 3-year tenancies. During those 3 years, in years 2 and 3, the rent can only go up by inflation. But also we're going to stop letting agents ripping off tenants. When you buy a property, an estate agent charges the seller a fee, not the buyer. When you want to rent a property, the letting agent charges the landlord a fee, but also the tenant. We're going to outlaw letting agents charging a fee.
What did you make of the Lib Dem policy that was mooted last week about called rent to buy, dubbed rent to buy? Over a long period of time, you can effectively rent your property, so you won't have to stump up a deposit, but then you own it at the end of it.
Yeah. Shared ownership schemes where you can have a combination of you own part of the equity and you pay rent as well.
And then eventually buy somebody out if you wish.
One size fits all doesn't work anymore. Look, unless you've got bank of mum and dad to pay your deposit, or unless you're earning a huge salary, the idea of buying a property in London is now gone. I mean, I was very lucky. My wife and I both working. We were able to buy a property in our 20s. My daughters, aged 15 and 13, have got no chance at all once they leave university, hopefully if they go to university or do vocational apprenticeships, to be able to buy a property in London. 1 out of 3, this is a scary figure, 1 out of 3 Londoners, by the time they're 34, will still be living with mum and dad. I love my mum and dad, right? But the idea of living with my mum and dad when I was 34 and happily married would have, not been a great one.
I don't know. I spent a year last year practically living with my mum in Liverpool when I was working between the southeast and the northwest of England, and it was really nice.
Yeah. I need to speak to your mum to see if she agrees.
She's too nice. Yeah. She's too, But I should point out that you've just alerted your daughters to the fact that there is such a thing as the bank of mum and dad now. So they'll probably have a penthouse by the time they're 25.
I mean, the really, and this is why Mohammed's question is so important. I meet Londoners all the time. I meet people who have got their own property, worried about their children who've come home from university and are living in their box room again because they can't afford to rent, let alone buy. I have young, talented professionals working for me and friends of mine who've got no chance of buying a property in London, even though there's 2 incomes in the household. I've got friends whose landlords are ripping them off. Their tenancy runs out after 6 months or 12 months. They charge a huge fee to give them a new contract, and they pay huge amount in rent. So we need to solve the housing crisis. For me, and my generation of London politicians, this is the number one biggest issue.
And can I ask Mohammed, is it the number one biggest issue for you when it comes to how you vote in May, Mohammed?
It will be number one issue because most of the population, young population, they've got no chance, as Sadiq mentioned. But there's two issues in this one. First issue is the politicians say one thing and do another. That's one thing before election. The second thing is that how are we going to fund? I don't know how many houses have been built in the last 5 years, and how he mentioned 200,000. But the second question is the funding for 200,000,
Sure.
and the first is obviously. Many politicians say that every election, but they do not follow.
Yeah, well, so let me give you the figures, and I hate throwing figures out because it's a politician's trick. But so last year,
Just got a text from somebody here criticising you for doing so. There you go. You got it before me.
That's my wife.
Yeah.
So last year, London councils, they're the 32 London boroughs, so put aside City of London, they said that we need, roughly speaking, 80,000 homes in London. A combination, some council, some owner-occupiers, 80,000 homes to be built in London. Last year, we built the lowest number since the 1920s, 23,000. So it's a big, big problem, Mohammed. Now, they're not all going to be council homes, so I'm not going to make a mistaken promise. We're going to have thousands and thousands of council homes. They're not all going to be council homes, so they're not all going to be funded by taxpayers. Some of them will be given permission to developers, but we'll say to developers, when you've been given permission, you use it or you lose it. But the important thing is this: once the houses are built, we've got to make sure Londoners get the opportunity to buy them. If you look at Inner London, in Inner London last year, 70% of new homes built in Inner London were built by foreigners. I have nothing against foreigners. Some of my best friends are foreigners. Some of my family are foreigners. But these are properties bought off plan before Londoners had a chance to buy them. So what will we do? We will say when a development is built, local residents get first dibs on at least half of those properties. But secondly, we aren't going to allow people overseas to buy properties off plan.
Okay, we have one more caller. Time for one more caller from Sam in Nottingham. Fire away, Sam.
Hi there. Sadiq, I just wanted to ask if you regret using your phone whilst driving.
Good question, Sam. I didn't use my phone whilst driving, and a Tory website alleged that I did. A Tory MP then wrote to the police and asked them to investigate whether I used my phone whilst driving. They spent probably thousands of pounds investigating this allegation made by the Tory MP, and I was found to be completely innocent. People shouldn't drive and use their phone. I've been a road safety champion since I first became an MP. We're campaigning for even more 20 miles per hour zones in Tooting, and it's really important that nobody does drive and use their phone as well.
Police said there was insufficient evidence to proceed. This was after Tory MP Justin Tomlinson raised those concerns. So, satisfied with that, Sam?
Into a bus lane. He definitely did cut into a bus lane in front of a blood ambulance. That wasn't smashing, was it?
Well, I'm happy to have a discussion about my driving habits, but I promise you, I didn't cut into a bus line. My advice to you is be careful the websites you read, Sam.
Can you explain how to use a box junction?
Don't go into one unless you know you can get out of it. Is the easiest advice I can give.
It's very good advice. You can tell you're the father of teenage daughters. I made that mistake a couple of times, and people don't like it one bit, do they? You really do cause problems when you go into a box junction.
Well, the problem is this: when you try and be savvy, and because of your local intelligence, that you can get out of a box junction in time, but it causes huge obstructions, and it's not to be done.
Can I just ask you one more? And it's on immigration, and it's because a lot of the texts and tweets that we haven't had time to read out have reflected on this. One here says, Sadiq Khan has said nothing about immigration, dangerous Labour, Labour spells danger. Can I ask you about something Tony Blair said in relation to this? People might remember from the last general election, Gillian Duffy, the woman who challenged the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown about the amount of immigration from Eastern Europe. Tony Blair has piped up on this and said, we should take on views like that. We should take on views that it was the wrong thing to do. So there's a difference there, isn't there, between how Tony Blair would characterise Labour's immigration policy as a success, I think he would characterise it as, but Labour has since accepted that they didn't get the numbers right.
Look, I'm the son of immigrants. I think immigration has brought huge economic, cultural and social benefits to our country. And it's made London the best city in the world. You've got to walk down the road, whether it's M&S, whether it's a chicken tikka, whether it's the Mini Cooper, chips. If you think of some of the things that are quintessentially British, but are here thanks to immigrants, it's huge. I think the point Tony Blair was making, which I agree with, is we've got to have a debate about these things. Reasonably will have concerns about immigration. Sometimes it's a proxy for other concerns they've got, so they can't get decent housing. They're told it's the fault of the immigrants. Their sons and daughters can't get a decent job. They're told it's the fault of the immigrants. And it's worth having the debate and discussion about this. I think, immigration is of huge benefit to our country, but, and this is why it's important we have the discussion, what we have to recognise is sometimes a pace can cause problems in certain communities. And what we've accepted is the pace of immigration when it's called the A8, the accession 8 countries from because we didn't have arrangements, the pace led to communities in the space of a few short weeks changing rapidly. So, for example, in some schools in Boston and Lincolnshire, I visited these schools when I was a minister in local government. Within the course of a few weeks, you had, none of the children for whom English was a second language, and over the course of a few weeks, you had 10, 20, 30 where it was a second language, which caused huge problems in that school. Now, we shouldn't pretend it wasn't an issue, and we've recognised it was an issue, but my starting point always is, I think it's brought huge benefits to this country, and that's my starting premise, not just but as somebody who's a proud Londoner who.
But I need to bring it, to be brief, but to bring it back full circle to our original conversation in the first hour of this programme about what Trevor Phillips has said, people have been uncomfortable about talking about those issues, and the Labour Party as an organisation was uncomfortable about talking about it.
I think we should be able to talk about...
Gordon Brown.
Yeah, I think we should be able to talk about anything and be able to take on people's concerns and address them. Listen, the reason why people are cynical about politicians, why people don't get registered and then don't vote, is because they think we don't understand the issues and challenges they face every day. If we're not willing to listen to them, how can we have any chance of addressing them and giving them the confidence to get registered to vote and then vote?
Thank you for coming and joining us today, Sadiq Khan, Shadow Justice Secretary and Labour MP for Tooting. We'll have you back if you're willing to come.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. It's 10 to 2 now. 3 even, sorry. I can't even tell the time. 10 to 3.
I'm Joanne Webb. In the LBC Travel Centre, there are delays in London on the A2 eastbound between the Black Prince Interchange and Dartford Heath, and that was after an accident that happened earlier. Also in London, very busy northbound on the A20 Sidcup Road in Mottingham, heading towards the Cliftons roundabout, and that's after an accident where only one lane is open. Also in London, there are delays in Bermondsey because Southwark Park Road is closed in both directions, and that's because of bridge maintenance works. In Dorset, the A338, that's the Wessex Way, is closed in both directions after an accident. There's also been quite a large spillage as well, fuel spillage, so that's causing quite lengthy queues in the surrounding area. In Somerset, the A39 at Bridgewater is closed as well, and that's also in both directions. In Worcestershire, the M5 is closed southbound between junction 6 at the A449 exit and junction 7 at the A44 exit, and that's after an accident. Keeping you moving, your next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC.
A house fire can take